Good afternoon everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Auto-Enrolment, Understanding Increased Minimum Contributions and its Implications. We have already, just before we get started here, I just want to complete a sound check. So at the right of your screen on your control panel, you'll see a questions bar, and if you can type in a yes if you can hear me, that would be great. Okay, so there's lots of yeses coming through there, that's brilliant. Okay, so let's get started. To introduce myself, I'm Rachel Hines and I'm part of the marketing team here at BrightPay. Today's webinar has been designed to give you an insight into the upcoming changes to the minimum contribution rates, which is also known as phasing. Just a quick look at the agenda then. First up is an overview of phasing and who it applies to. Next, we will be discussing how employers can prepare for the increases in minimum contributions and how to inform employees about the increases. With new employers reaching their duty start dates, we will also have a look at how these new employers will be affected by phasing. Finally, we will be looking at how increases will be implemented in BrightPay, finishing off with a quick look at BrightPay Connect. At the end of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session, so if you do have any questions, feel free to type them into the questions box and I'll try to get through as many as I can. Today's webinar is also being recorded and we will be sending all attendees a link to the recording of today's webinar along with the presentation slides. It will probably be tomorrow by the time we have a chance to send the email out to everyone. A short survey will also appear after you close down the webinar, and we'd ask that you take 1 minute to fill it out in order for us to improve webinars going forward. Okay, so first up we have an overview of phasing. By law, the minimum contribution rates for auto-enrolment are set to increase. There are 2 stages to the increases in minimum contributions, which have been described as phasing. The first increase will take place on the 6th of April this year and the second increase in April 2019. On the 6th of April 2018, the total minimum contribution rates will increase from 2% to 5%. Employers will be required to contribute a minimum of 2%, with employees contributing the remaining 3% to make up the 5% minimum. Minimum contributions will undergo further increases on the 6th of April 2019, with the total minimum contribution rate increasing to 8%, representing a 3% employer and 5% employee contribution. It is an employer's responsibility to make sure that they are prepared for these new contribution amounts. Both the employer and the employee can choose to contribute a higher amount to the pension scheme if they wish to do so. If an employer chooses to pay more than the employer minimum, but less than the total minimum amount, then the employee must make up the difference. If an employer wishes, they can also decide to pay the total minimum contribution rate, which is 5% from April 2018 and 8% from April 2019. In these cases, the employee does not have to pay any contributions unless the rules of the pension scheme say otherwise. In certain cases where employee and employers are contributing above the current minimum requirements to the pension scheme, an increase in contributions may not be required if the total contribution is still above the new increased minimum contribution rate. If an employer is making pension contributions as part of a salary sacrifice agreement, it is important to note that their employees' contracts of employment may need to be reviewed and amended as a result of phasing. For example, consider an employee whose current contract of employment states that they will sacrifice 1% of their salary in return for the employer to pay the equivalent amount into the pension scheme, along with their own 1% employer contribution. How will the new April 2018 minimum requirement now be met? So the question remains, who does phasing apply to? The pensions regulator has sent letters to all employers informing them about the increases happening in April. Phasing will apply to all employers who have staff enrolled into a workplace pension scheme. For employers who don't have staff enrolled, then they do not need to take any further action. However, all employers must assess their employees on an ongoing basis to determine if any of their staff become eligible for auto-enrolment. Where an employee does become eligible, then the employer must process the minimum contributions that are applicable at that current time period. Phasing also applies to new employers, whereby if an employer reaches their auto-enrolment duty start date on or after the 6th of April 2018, they will immediately be required to comply and implement the total minimum 5% contribution rate. Equally, employers who reach their duty start date on or after the 6th of April 2019 will need to comply with 8% total minimum contribution rate. Employers need to make sure that they understand the upcoming contribution increases and how these changes will apply to them and their staff. It will be important for employers to plan ahead and be ready for the increases from 6th of April 2018 and 6th of April 2019. The pensions regulator is advising employers to check with their current payroll software provider to ensure that it will handle and calculate the increased contribution amounts. Be aware that HMRC Basic PAYE tools does not cater for the needs of automatic enrolment calculations. Employers who use basic tools continue to be at high risk of receiving a fine for non-compliance, as their assessment and contribution calculations must be calculated manually. Employers must know when and how much to deduct when both sets of increases come into effect. Typically, any good payroll software will automatically prompt you when the increases happen in real time. Take steps to ensure that the increases have been put in place correctly, particularly for the first payroll run. It is important to note that increased contributions are required to be processed on the first pay date after the 6th of April. With regards to the pension scheme itself, most pension providers are taking steps to allow for the increases. If your current scheme doesn't support the increased contributions, you should speak to your pension provider to allow the new increased rates. Moving on now to informing staff about the increases in minimum contribution rates. Some pension providers have already begun to communicate the increases to their customers and their members. It would be a good idea to touch base with your current workplace pension provider to find out what kind of support they are offering to inform staff about the increases, as not all pension providers are doing so. Unlike the initial assessment and enrolment at the staging date or the duty start date, it is not a mandatory requirement to inform or write to staff about the increases in minimum contributions. However, it would be considered best practice to clearly communicate with employees to let them know before the increase takes place. This will help minimize confusion and reduce queries. Some employees may even decide to opt out of the workplace pension scheme due to the increased financial cost. The pensions regulator has a sample letter template available to employers to give to employees, which should help them understand the upcoming changes. BrightPay 1819 will also include functionality to send letters to employees informing them about phasing and how it will apply to them. Your payroll software should easily and automatically calculate the phased increases for you. It's important that you check with both your pension provider and your payroll software provider to ensure that they can support the phased minimum rates. If you're an accountant looking after auto-enrolment for your clients, it will be your responsibility to make sure that the correct amount of pension contributions are being deducted and to inform your clients about these increases. If your payroll provider is not prepared for the increases, the correct amount may not be paid into the workplace pension scheme on time. Any delay in implementing the increased minimum contribution rates would result in non-compliance and potential fines if not rectified. BrightPay can automate and calculate the increases for you, so we're now going to have a quick look at BrightPay just to show you a quick look at this. Okay, so you can see here I've finalised the 17-18 tax year, and I have a few different scenarios set up to show you. If we click into our first employee, we have implied the minimum 1% and 1% contributions to date. So this employee's pension contributions will need to be increased in line with the new minimum contribution amounts when we move over to BrightPay 18-19. If we click on Casper then, you'll see that he has custom contribution rates of 2% employee contribution and 2% employer contribution. Once again, an increase in auto-enrolment contributions is required. Just clicking down to a third employee then, you can see Hayley also has contribution rates, but her contributions are 5% employer and 5% employee, so this is well above the new 2018 minimum rates. Okay, so I've already set up BrightPay 18-19 and imported the employer file. So I'm just going to click out of 17-18. Okay, so you'll see the contribution rates for Benedict, who was at 1% and 1%, has automatically been uplifted to the minimum 3% employer and 2% employee. On the other hand, Casper's contribution rates, which was set at 2% employer and 2% employee, has not changed. BrightPay doesn't want to assume that the employee's contribution rates are meeting the minimum. Instead, we will receive an alert at the top of the screen saying that the contributions are below the minimum. If we click on Fix on the alert, you will see a drop-down with various options to choose from. Apply the minimum employee-employer contribution rate will change the rates from 3% employee to 3% employee and 2% employer. Increase employer contribution rate only will change the contribution rates to 2% employee and 3% employer. As mentioned previously, the new minimum employer contribution is 2% and the new minimum total contribution is 5%. Therefore, the employer can choose to pay some or all of this 5% if they wish. So there is no minimum employee contribution. In this scenario, as the total contribution is 4%, which is 1% below the minimum, but the employer has already reached the minimum 2% contribution, we can decide whether we want the additional 1% to come from the employer or the employee. In this instance, I'm going to go with the minimum employer and employee contributions. Once we click on this option, you'll see the employee contribution rate has instantly increased to 3%. Moving on to Hayley then, we don't have any alerts to increase our contribution rates. This is because the contribution rates, even though they're custom rates, they're already above the 18-19 minimum contribution rates. I just have one additional scenario set up here. So far we've looked at employees who are paying auto-enrolment contributions on a percentage basis. Looking at an employee who is paying contributions by a fixed amount, as would have happened in previous years with BrightPay, BrightPay will work out the percentage basis of the employee's earnings in the background, and they will alert you if it falls below the minimum contribution rates that are required at this particular time. So again, we have to fix this scenario. This time I'm going to choose increase the employer contribution rate only, and you will see that it has increased the employer's rate. So once we're happy with the payroll, then I'm going to finalize the payslips. Going into Benedict's pay then, which was automatically uplifted, you'll see BrightPay is automatically carrying through the increased contribution rates each pay period. Going back to Casper also, the new contribution rates that were selected are also flowing through. Overall, you can see from our demo that implementing the increases in auto-enrollment minimum contributions is fairly seamless with BrightPay. Before we go to the questions and answers section, I do want to take a couple of minutes to show you how our optional add-on BrightPay Connect works. BrightPay Connect works alongside BrightPay Payroll. The payroll information is automatically backed up and stored in the cloud. However, the payroll itself must still be run on the desktop application. Because the payroll information is stored online, it also allows for accountants, employers and employees to view payroll information in their own self-service online account. So BrightPay Connect automatically backs up the payroll data to the cloud every 15 minutes and again when the employer file is closed. Along with protecting against ransomware and cyber attacks, it also makes sure that you never lose your payroll data if your PC crashes. A chronological history of backups will be maintained, which can be restored at any time. Employers can log in anytime to their own employer dashboard, or if you're a payroll bureau, your clients can also log into the employer dashboard anytime. Both employers and payroll clients can view payroll information in real time. The online employer portal allows access to all employees along with their payslips and all relevant information on file for each individual employee. You can view payroll reports, so any reports that are set up in BrightPay are automatically available on the dashboard. As soon as the payroll is finalised, these reports can be run instantly by the employer or the payroll client. For payroll bureaus, this eliminates the need to send information to the clients each pay period. Employers can also view a company-wide annual leave calendar where they can view leave for employees including annual leave, unpaid leave, sick leave and parenting leave. They can view amounts due to HMRC with the full breakdown of the P30. And finally, employers can upload employee documents such as contracts of employment, staff handbooks or privacy policies. Okay, so I'm going to shut this down now and I've logged in as an employee now. So I'm logged in as Carla Byrne. So the layout is quite similar to the employer dashboard. Employees can log in anytime on any device, and there's also the option to download a smartphone app. So in this password protected portal, employees can view and download current and historic payslips, P60s and P45s. Payslips are automatically added to the employee's self-service portal each pay period, which eliminates the need to print or email payslips. In the calendar then, the employee can view all past and future leave with the ability to easily submit holiday requests at the click of a button. Here they can also view the number of annual leave days taken and leave days remaining for the year. Going back to the bureau or to the employer dashboard then, once an employee requests leave on the self-service, the employer will see a notification on their dashboard. Employers can authorize the leave requests with changes automatically flowing back to the payroll software. Just back to the employee documents again then, the employee can also view these documents on their smartphone app or online self-service account. So in this example, we have the auto-enrollment letter for the employee to inform them about the increases in pension contributions. So that was just a very quick look at BrightPay Connect and the phasing in BrightPay. We do run online demos of both systems nearly every day. The demos are free to attend and last approximately 20 minutes. Just before I finish up, I'd just like to say that BrightPay's standard license costs £99 plus VAT per tax year, and our bureau license costs £229 plus VAT per tax year. Both of these licenses include free phone and email support and have full functionality, including auto-enrollment, CIS, a payroll journal export to accounting packages, the ability to batch send RTI submissions, and so much more. So if you want to find out more about BrightPay or BrightPay Connect, make sure to book a demo. Just while I'm getting set up for the questions and answers, I want to say that GDPR is changing how we communicate with you. After the 25th of May, we will not be able to email you about webinars and events, special offers and other payroll news without you subscribing to our newsletter. You can subscribe to our newsletter in a number of ways: in the survey after today's webinar, in the follow-up email which will be sent out hopefully tomorrow, or you can also do this on our website. And just so you know, you will be able to unsubscribe at any time. Okay, so now for the questions and answers, and I will try to answer as many as I can. So just bear with me now while I get set up and try to read the questions and answer them at the same time. Okay. So the first question in here is, do I have to issue letters to employees regarding the increases? So it's not a legal requirement, unlike at the staging date or the duty start date. However, if it is recommended and it is best practice to communicate with the employees, considering they will be contacting you with queries wondering why the amount has gone up. If we pay staff weekly, would our first increase in pension contribution rates start on the 6th of April or the 13th of April, which is the first payday? So that in that case, you will be processing the increases on the 13th of April. The next one here then, if an employee doesn't wish to pay the increased rate, is there only option to opt out, or can they remain at 1% if they wish? That one's kind of an awkward one in that technically they are supposed to be paying the increased contribution rates, and they do have the option to opt out. Some pension providers do allow employees to contribute less than the minimum, but it will not be an auto-enrolment pension then, so they'll still need to be reassessed at re-enrolment. The pensions regulator do also advise that you're not supposed to promote this option to employees, as this would be similar to at the staging date when you couldn't say to employees, you couldn't advise them to opt out, you can't sway their decision in any way. So if an employee asks about it, they can do it depending on the pension scheme, but it is kind of an iffy one. Okay, another question in here. If we are running a 4-weekly payroll, the period covered is from the 24th of March to the 14th of April. Do we have to split the pension contribution 2% until the 5th of April and 5% from the 5th of April, from the 6th of April, I assume? So yeah, that one again is depending on the pension scheme you've chosen. Some pension providers allow this and some don't. Technically, you are supposed to apply the increase for the full pay period. However, obviously there is a saving in it for employers if they choose to just do it from the 6th of April. So if you are doing it this way, I know BrightPay, if you want to do it, if you want to break up the pay period where you do 2% for some of it and 5% for the other part, you will need to calculate that figure manually. Okay, another question here, not specifically an AE question, but I have BrightPay, both the standard license and Connect for 17-18, and I am about to run payroll on the 31st of March 2018. If I buy 18-19 license before the 31st of March, will there be any problems in processing the payroll on the 31st of March for 17-18 tax year? No, so there's no hassle there. BrightPay works on a standalone basis. So each year we have a separate payroll package. So purchasing the 18-19 software now won't affect the payroll for this tax year in any way. Okay, another question here about BrightPay Connect. Is there the ability for my clients to upload timesheets to Connect? At the moment, this is not included. However, it is something that the developers are working on at the moment, and we are hoping to have it within the next few weeks, if not the next month or so. Essentially, for payroll bureaus, they'll be able to request timesheets from the client. So that the client can log into Connect, upload the hours, and then the bureau will get a notification saying that the hours have been uploaded, and they just need to click a button and it will populate BrightPay with all the hours for the pay period then. So I think that's it. Sorry, there's one more question here after coming in. Is there anywhere in BrightPay to generate a notification letter of the increases? So yeah, I'm actually going to open BrightPay for this one just to show you where it is. Okay, so in the pensions tab, here last year there was, I'm trying to think what it was called, and there was a separate option here, but then this year we have a journey report. So essentially it'll outline every step the employee has taken along the way, their enrolment date, their opt-in date. If they've opted out, it'll all be included in there. And there's also the option for letters. So you can print, export or email the letters for the different worker categories, or there is also the letter to tell staff about the minimum contribution increases. So that is there as well. So that's it for today, and there's no more questions coming in there. So thanks to everyone for logging on for today's webinar, and we will send out the email with the recording. It'll either be this evening or first thing tomorrow morning. Okay, thank you.